Hey loves. So I just got off a summit interview, which is on the pleasure principles, and we got to talking about how do you have a conversation with a man about stuff sexually that feels really vulnerable for you. So this kind of connected into the live stream I did yesterday on how to surrender to a man, and it's like, how do you actually have that conversation with him on the stuff that's coming up for you during sex? Now, what I'm going to share with you today doesn't necessarily have to be a sex conversation. It can be anything that you have been not telling a man. Maybe you're scared to share with him. There's something really vulnerable for you, or you don't feel safe to tell him. You don't feel like he'll hold space for you, or he'll listen, all this kind of stuff. You feel like, there's no point, like I'm just going to keep it to myself, like whatever's there, like there's just something that you need to share or that you're holding in, and you just don't know how to address that conversation. So what I'm going to share with you is how to address that. And then the other thing I'm going to share is how do you actually get a man to open up to you? Because one of the biggest complaints that I hear from women is something like, oh, he just doesn't open up. Like, he doesn't know how to communicate. I just wish he would open up to me. And so we're going to talk about that as well. And they go hand in hand, because guess what? Your vulnerability will inspire a man to be vulnerable with you, okay? Men love vulnerability. Yeah, it's the thing that, we often don't share because it is so vulnerable, and it is, like, there's a lot of fear on showing this part of us, and there's a lot of conditioning around that. And it's when I started exploring this, I was like, wow, it's my vulnerability that opens a man up, that makes him more attracted to me, right? So just be aware of that. So one of the first things that you can do to open up a conversation is to make a request, okay? And so a request looks something like, when is a good time for us to talk? And when you make this request, you have to be willing to hear no. Otherwise, it becomes a demand, right? Now, be aware that you need to ask that. So the reason why you make this request is sometimes we go into having a conversation and that man is not in a space to hear us, right? He might have other stuff going on. He's like single focused on something else. And he can't be present for you. So you need to make a time when he can fully be present, right? And he can be there. And the other thing you want to add to that is, you haven't done anything wrong. I just have something vulnerable I want to share with you. Something like that. Because when you ask a man to talk, his automatic thought is often, what have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? And he's automatically thinking about all the things. And I do this as a woman too. Like, if someone says, EJ, can we find a time to talk? I'm like, shit, what have I done? What do they want to talk to me about? So you're just giving that reassurance of, you haven't done anything wrong. I just have some vulnerability I need to share with you. So it's a really powerful thing to put at the end. And so the guy's like, he's not coming in defense. Otherwise, he might come in already ready to defend himself about something, right? And you don't want him in that way, all right? So this is especially important if every time you've had a talk, that it's been you making him wrong about something or accusing him of something, So just be aware of that. Like, he's going to go off what's happened before. So be aware that you need to kind of address that he hasn't done anything wrong. My battery is dying, so hopefully it's going to charge here. Otherwise, I might have to do 2 live streams. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing is when you sit down to the conversation. So let's say he said yes, and he's like, yep, let's chat at this time. Let's get together. Like, you want to be, hopefully if you can see him in person, you want to be doing this in person, which, yes, is going to require more vulnerability. Definitely do not do it over text, okay? Do not do it over text, right? If you can't see him in person, yes, do it over on a phone conversation. Now, the first way to start this conversation is addressing the vulnerability, addressing the fear that's in the space, because you're probably feeling like, oh shit, like I have to share like this fear that I have, and oh, it's scary, right? And so you want to say, like, this feels vulnerable for me to share with you. And you can add in because ... So it might be something like, there's something I've been needing to tell you, and it feels really vulnerable to share this with you because I'm afraid that if I tell you that you won't want me anymore, or that you'll leave me, or that you'll blame yourself, or you'll blame me. And you know, what I'm really committed to is having more connection. So you can add a commitment there, like say, like, this is, I'm wanting to create more connection here with you, whatever it is for you. But I'm afraid that by sharing this, and the thing to note on that is that your vulnerability is what creates more connection, right? So, and maybe you might be able to share, like, I feel like it's not safe to share this with you because you've been upset in the past, and but I really want us to have this beautiful relationship and connection with you, and I just feel if I don't share it with you that I'm not fully able to be in this, something like that. Okay, so maybe you want to write that out before, journal about that, to see what it is that you are really afraid of, like what's in your space, right? Now I want to add in here that you want to be doing this with healthy men, right? Because if you share your vulnerability that someone that's perhaps narcissistic, that someone is probably going to twist that vulnerability around. So I've had my experience with being in those types of relationships, and this doesn't work for that. And my recommendation is to not be in that relationship. If you're not with a healthy man, you should not be in that connection, okay? Which is hard to hear sometimes, and I went through it for years, and I get it because I know how hard it is to want to make it work. And so just be aware that, you know, if you don't feel safe in your relationship, that relationship is never going to have the connection and the love that you want. Okay, if you do not feel safe, that is the foundation of any healthy relationship, is creating safety. And so you need to start looking at, what is it that I need to feel safe, right? And maybe that's something you can address, where maybe there's some ways that you haven't been feeling safe, and maybe that's the thing you need to address, is that this is what I need to feel safe. This is what's been coming up for me. There is a way that we can create more safety in our connection. Okay, so that's a whole other conversation. But your vulnerability is going to inspire him. So the other thing you also want to share here is, your vulnerability is going to inspire a healthy man. I just wanted to make that clearer. So the other thing you want to ask him also, so this is the thing, I actually went through this with a friend where I had to ask them to hold space for me, because one of the problems I was having was that whenever I shared, they would interrupt me. And that was the thing I needed to address. There's a conversation, I was like, oh, how do I address this? And one of the fears I said, like, I've been wanting to share this with you, but I've been afraid that I wouldn't be able to fully express it because you might interrupt and I wouldn't be heard. But I'm really conscious of not wanting to make you wrong, because your friendship is really important to me. And I'm also afraid that I might be made wrong and you might turn it around on me. So really, like, this is like super vulnerable stuff. You want to share exactly what's coming up for you. And most people are going to be like, I can't believe you felt that way. Like, oh, and they'll will want to take some sort of ownership. Brett, that's a different conversation, but I would because it actually depends on the relationship. So that's a different conversation. But this is more so people that are in some sort of connection, healthy type of relationship. It can even be a friendship, right? So I'm not addressing just exclusive relationships. So yeah, that's a different conversation. But so anyway, but thank you for sharing. I actually get what you're saying, and I can address that on maybe another live stream around the exclusivity. But a man, whether he's a friend or he will be willing to hear your vulnerability. If he's a friend and he's not, then I would be really looking at that friendship, to be honest. Yeah, this is something that I would be considering. So the other thing that you want to do is to ask him to hold space. He doesn't. So often women want to be heard, they don't want to be fixed, right? And so often men are like, how can I fix this? How can I problem solve? How can I fix it? Where's the solution? Like, I can save this, I can fix this, I can fix, like, you're talking and he's like, ooh, are these solutions? And you're like, no, I don't want to be fixed. So you can just ask, can you just listen while I fully express myself? And then at the end, if you have some advice for me, can you just ask me if I'm ready to hear that? Because it would make me feel really safe if you ask me at the end, rather than also just going into fixing, okay? Just going into fixing automatically. And I have to check myself in with this. I go into fixing sometimes too. So it's like, even though I'm like can hold space. It's like, oh, hang on, like, and it depends on the connection that you have with the person and the conversation that you're having. Like, it might just be a back and forth kind of conversation. But if you're really sharing something that's really vulnerable, ask that person to just hold space for you in that moment, and what that means, what holding space means to you. Because some people don't know. When you say hold space, they're like, I don't know what that means. So you're going to have to explain that I just would like you to hear me while I fully share myself with you. And be witness. Like, holding space is about witnessing someone else, but whilst being a witness to your own feelings and emotions and thoughts, without going into them while the other person is sharing. And then you have an opportunity to share and ask questions. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that shortly as well, because that's going to come into how to get a man to open up to you. So with that, okay, actually that's the end of that piece, I think. If you have any questions, let me know. Yeah, okay. So then, you have that conversation, and then you can reflect and talk about it. And for the person that is holding the space, I encourage you to be in a space of curiosity, okay? Rather than putting your own thoughts and feelings, is to actually get curious about what's going on for that person, okay? So be in curiosity, really powerful. This is really powerful for long-term relationships, to keep chemistry and interest alive, is to remain in curiosity, okay? So be curious and seek to understand rather than judge first. Seek to understand what's going on for that person rather than judging or making them wrong, or that's just their shit. Like, no, seek to and see if you can have some compassion, for what's been coming up for them, and maybe come to some agreement, like, how can we make this work for us? How can we help our get needs met? What are the things that need to happen to bring us back into connection? So that kind of stuff. Your vulnerability will bring back this connection. I remember I had an ex-partner who used to say, oh, I'm just not feeling the connection anymore, or like, I'm feeling connected with this other person more. And I realized which was really painful for me to hear, I realized the reason was because I'd stopped being vulnerable. And the reason I stopped being vulnerable because I didn't feel safe. And I didn't have these conversations. And I didn't feel safe to have these conversations. And I didn't address that, right? So this is one of the reasons a lot of couples end up breaking up, because they just stop being vulnerable with each other. They stop sharing with each other. So this is really powerful stuff, guys. All right. Let's talk about how to get a man to open up to you. So, if you, for example, are noticing that there's something going on with this guy, right? Like, there's something going on with him. I know he's not talking to me about it. There's something up. Or he doesn't talk to me about his feelings. Like, he never shares with me. The worst thing that you can do is to say, you never open up to me. Or, why won't you open up? Just tell me what's going on. Like, this is going to make this guy resist more and retract, and he's not going to open up because he feels like he's being shamed and wronged, and it's going to pull him back into himself, and you're going to push him away, okay? So whatever you do not do that, right? If something is going on for this guy, he needs time to process. I was watching a video the other day, and it gave an example of men's and women's emotions and how they process differently. And the example was something like, this isn't exact. A woman processes her emotions like a rocket ship. Like, she can process her emotions fast. And a man does this, and this was like on a scientific thing that they'd done. A man processes his emotions comparatively like a horse and a cart carrying like a massive rock. So recently I had some time apart from a lover, a couple of weeks. And I processed my stuff pretty quickly. Like, anytime something was coming up, I was processing it. And I was like, it was 2 weeks. I was like, is he ready yet? Like, and I know that I just had to hold back, which was really hard. it was just like, oh man, like, just gotta give him time, right? And then when we finally sat down and we talked about what was going on, I just held space for him to share with me. And I heard him. And he was like, I don't know why I was feeling this way. In my mind, I was like, I know exactly why you were feeling this way. This from the past was triggered, and that's what was going on, and that's why you're feeling this way. He's like, not quite understanding it. He's like, I'm going to have to process it more. I was like, I really just want to tell him what's going on, which I'd been telling him for a while. I was like, I can see that this stuff is going on for you. But he had to process it and get it in his own way Because this is the other thing. Until he feels it for himself, he will not believe it, right? So until we get some kind of proven fact or something going from a trusted source, like I could tell him black and blue, like tell him in black and blue exactly what's going on for him. Until he feels it in himself and processes for himself, he probably won't believe me. So especially when it's intuitively guided, and I intuitively know that this is going on for you. Like I just know, and it's like my intuition isn't too often to me, and it's like, well, that's not a trusted source. And so, and until it becomes a trusted source when he discovers it for himself, right? So the best thing you can do is give this man time to process before you come at him and be like, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. Like I know what's going on for me. Like you tell me what's going on for you. Like let's talk about it. Da da da. No, it's not gonna work, right? So the other thing is that often men don't feel safe to express themselves fully because they've been shamed in the past, or like for expressing themselves, maybe they've expressed their emotions, their anger, their sadness, and they've been told that it's weakness, or they shouldn't act like that, or be strong, or whatever it is. And so they've been like, well, it's not safe for me to express how I'm feeling. It's not safe for me to express my sadness, or, you know, this woman's like, especially if he really cares about you and wants to impress you, he's not going to want to necessarily show like this more vulnerable side of him, because there's an association with that being weak from conditioning and growing up. So that can be there, right? The other thing though that doesn't make it safe is if he has shared with a woman before, maybe you before, and he has been shamed for that, not shamed, if he has been, we just did that, if you have got angry or upset or gone crazy, like it's not safe for him to express with you. If you have somehow made him wrong and blamed him back or defended yourself, like he's not going to want to share with you, like fully express, and especially if this is a pattern, and this is something that happened recently with a man in my life. And you know, I hold space, and the more that I've held, at first he was like, oh, I'm afraid to share this with you because I'm afraid that you're going to get angry, and that hasn't really happened because I've been holding space. And it's like it's been so ingrained that he hasn't believed it until finally he's like, oh, I just realized that like I've got so much stuff from women getting angry at me that's just like big stuff, right? So he shared, and he's like starting to realize now that how big this is, and this is actually really, really common. And men actually fear this, like this woman's going to go off at me if I share with her, right? And this goes both ways, okay? But this is, yeah, really, really important that we just, if a man is going to share with us, that we go into the holding space, that we go into saying, I hear you, being in curiosity. Like if we want a man to hold space for us, we got to hold space for him as well. Like being like curiosity of, you know, what else is going on for him? Where does this come from? What's that about? Like, I mean, you don't want to like dig and drill into him, but just, you know, be with compassion and go, So one of the things I do is like, I kind of just sit with it. I'm like, and I'm like, thank you for being so vulnerable. Thank you for sharing with me. I really appreciate that. Your openness is inspiring, you know, this kind of stuff. And I really hear you, and I get why it feels that way. I'm trying to think of an example of when I did this recently. Anyway, something might come to me, but there's plenty. It's like I'm just having a mind blank with that. But something where, oh yeah, okay. I think that's, I don't know. I don't want to respect the man with that example. So, but it was something really vulnerable, like really, really vulnerable, that could have really affected my feelings. And that's the other thing, is that men take a lot of responsibility. Again, healthy men will be overly responsible for women's feelings. Like men drive to please women, like to make a woman happy, like they want it to make us happy. If they have to share something with us that might upset us, like that's scary. And because he feels responsible for our emotions, right? It's responsible for if we feel sadness or get upset. It's like somehow they may go into like, I've done something wrong. So that might be another thing. So one of the things I say, and I have to keep saying to I love it, is like, you're not responsible for my feelings. You are not responsible for my feelings. I'm responsible for my feelings. And if something you do triggers me, that's up to me to process that. That's up to me to look at that, right? And yes, we can talk agreements and boundaries and have those conversations. But if something comes up for me, yes, sometimes I want to be held in it and seen in it and heard in it. But ultimately, it's up. You are not responsible for my feelings. And this goes both ways. You know, we're actually not responsible for anyone else's feelings. Like, we're responsible for our own feelings, right? So, so some of the wording to help a man to open up is, instead of saying, tell me what's going on, or like, why won't you open up? If you can see that somebody's just saying the words, you can even put your hand on his knee, or just if he's in there in person, is, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And that gives him like full permission to go and process. And he will come back to you and share with you when he's ready. And he will. Like, you just got to make it safe, and you got to keep showing him that it's safe. Not just a once off, like, you got to keep showing him, right? Because then you become a trusted source. Then he will trust you to open up to you, that it's safe to open up to you. So many men feel not safe to open up to a woman, right? So you got to start creating that safety. And so it's going, what I'm sharing here in this video is just both ways. It's not one or the other. You know, we have to create safety for each other and to get that ultimate beautiful vulnerability and the connection, right? So at the end of these conversations, you can ask just the words, is there anything you need? Is there anything you need from me? And, you know, maybe it's a hug, or maybe there's agreements that need to be made in the space, right? Yeah, so if there's any questions, let me know. My battery is definitely about to die, but that's okay. Hello to everyone who's been tuning in. Oh, thanks to Letha. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but yeah. Yeah, so while I'm waiting to see if there's any questions, if this is stuff that you want to work on, I'm talking about this more. We're diving into some practices in my couples workshop. It's in February in the Gold Coast. Also be diving into stuff I'm doing a joint event with Aaron Kleineman, who's a men's transformational coach in masculinity and all sorts of cool stuff. We're going to be doing that at the end of April, and that's going to be for couples and singles, with both men and women. And I also do one-on-one coaching as well for couples and singles, and I teach. I also teach women how to do this that work with men as well, like that work in either coaching or sexuality, because it's really important that we know how to hold space and understand men. So one of the things I'm really, really like most passionate about is understanding men and understanding women, and bringing the sexes together to love each other and honor each other and worship each other, and just break the separation that we have, and understanding that we're different, and knowing those differences and loving each other anyway. So that's one of my absolute passions. So that's a lot of the stuff we'll be doing at those workshops, is some of those practices around that. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I just felt like I really had to share this while it was in my awareness. If you have any ways that work for you, please feel free to drop a comment, like something that really works for you or something that really resonated. Yeah, all right, beauties, and well, you're all beautiful people, like inside and out. So I was gonna say beauties and gentlemen, but like I think men are beautiful too. So all right, I've got to head out now. So much love, and chat soon. Bye.